The studio lights burned like miniature suns, casting halos over the sleek black floor of the primetime talk show set. Cameras hummed and the red recording light blinked alive as millions of viewers tuned in, unaware of the storm about to hit. A hush fell over the audience, a single, weighted pause stretched across the studio, charged like the air before a thunderclap. In that instant, Tyrus leaned forward, his eyes glinting with something between defiance and duty. "The world deserves to know," he said, voice low but carrying like a gunshot. The words sliced through the studio like a blade. Hillary Clinton blinked once, twice, the kind of blink that happens when a person's composure begins to slip. The viewers at home leaned closer to their screens, sensing something seismic was about to unfold. Just minutes earlier, everything had looked like a routine interview, a veteran politician versus a sharp-witted media personality known for throwing verbal grenades. The backdrop glowed with digital banners scrolling headlines, a set designed for safety and control. But beneath the calm veneer, tension brewed. Tyrus had spent months digging, chasing leads, and piecing together a narrative few dared to touch. He wasn't simply holding papers, he was holding a truth heavy enough to rattle the stage. Every beat of the audience's heart echoed in the silence. Hillary sat rigid, her hands clasped tightly enough to whiten her knuckles, but her voice at first remained calm. She had danced through controversies before. Yet as Tyrus began to unravel the details, line by line, the facade began to crack. Her eyes flickered to the cameras, an involuntary plea, a calculation of optics versus truth. "That's not what this interview was supposed to be," she whispered under her breath, but the microphones caught it anyway, amplifying it into a whisper heard across America. The viewers saw two worlds collide. Tyrus, who once stood on the edge of cynicism but now burned with purpose, and Hillary, whose career had been defined by strategy, resilience, and, to her critics, secrecy. As the revelations poured out, the studio transformed. Gasps rippled across the live audience. A producer offstage gestured frantically to cut to a commercial break, but the director held firm. This was television history in the making. The smell of hot lights and nervous sweat mixed in the air, palpable even through the screen. For Tyrus, this moment wasn't about ratings, it was about redemption. He had once ignored stories like these, dismissing them as rumor or noise. But a chance encounter with a whistleblower had cracked his cynicism. The story he carried wasn't merely political, it was human. It spoke of decisions made in shadows that shaped lives without their consent. His voice trembled not with fear but with the weight of those unseen people whose lives had been altered. Hillary's eruption came not as a scream but as a shattering of years of controlled messaging. Her voice rose, eyes flashing, a mixture of anger and disbelief. She challenged the accusations, called them distortions, tried to seize back the narrative. But the crowd wasn't the same as it had been in her earlier years. Social media fed off every micro-expression, and her anger became fuel for 1,000 interpretations. The set's cool blue lighting now looked almost storm gray against her trembling hands. Yet even in the chaos, something human surfaced. Hillary took a breath, her eyes softening for a flicker of a second. She spoke of pressure, of the impossible choices in public life, of the mistakes that snowball under the weight of power. For the first time, her voice cracked not with fury but with something like confession. The audience quieted. The cameras zoomed in. Even Tyrus paused, sensing that behind the political theater stood a human being wrestling with the consequences of her own legacy. The turning point arrived not with another revelation but with a question. Tyrus leaned forward and, instead of another blow, asked, "If you could speak directly to the people who feel betrayed, what would you say?" The studio fell into a cathedral silence. Hillary blinked away the sheen in her eyes and, for a heartbeat, seemed almost weightless. She spoke then, haltingly, but with a rawness few had ever heard, about lessons learned too late, about wanting to mend what was broken but feeling trapped by the machinery of politics. By the end of the segment, something unexpected had happened. This wasn't the destruction of a person or the triumph of a pundit. It was a collision of two imperfect worlds revealing their fractures. Viewers at home weren't just entertained, they were unsettled, inspired, even moved. Tyrus's face softened. He closed the folder, the pages now simply paper instead of ammunition. Hillary adjusted her microphone with hands steadier than before, her expression unreadable but somehow lighter. As the credits rolled and the cameras faded to black, the studio felt changed, a little less like a battlefield, a little more like a mirror. Both figures had walked to the edge of their public personas and shown something real. And that became the story people remembered, not just the secrets exposed but the vulnerability revealed. For days afterward, social media buzzed, pundits debated, and think pieces flowed. Yet in living rooms across the country, a quieter shift occurred, a conversation about accountability, empathy, and the cost of power. The lasting message was not that one person erupted or another exposed, but that truth and courage, when met with humanity, can transform confrontation into reckoning. The story left viewers thinking not only about the people on stage but about themselves, their own choices, and the forces that shape them. It was less about politics than about the universal struggle to face the past and reclaim one's integrity.